and welcome to Keep Talking, a community dialogue about mental health. My name is Gay Maxwell, and I'm the manager of the continuing education program at the Brattleboro Retreat. The Brattleboro Retreat is a 185-year-old addictions and mental health treatment facility. It's located in southeastern Vermont. It serves adults, adolescents, children in a variety of inpatient, outpatient, and partial hospitalization programs. The Brattleboro Retreat provides care and courage when being human hurts. Today in the BCTV studio, I'm so excited to introduce you to Dr. Patricia Papernow, who has come to the Brattleboro Retreat to present in the Office of Continuing Education's fall series. She's presenting a program called Understanding the Big Challenges of Becoming a Step Family. And that's happening tomorrow, but I thought she would be an excellent person to have come and talk to us about what it means to become a step family. I just want to say that Dr. Papernow is the author of Surviving and Thriving in Step Family Relationships, What Works and What Doesn't Work. You published that in 2013. Mm-hmm. And you're also the co-author with Karen Bunnell of the Step Family Handbook, From Dating to Getting Serious to Forming a Step Family. That was just published this year in 2018. Welcome, Dr. Papernow. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, it's a great. I'm very grateful for you spending the time. So I told the audience about the fact that you'll be presenting this conference tomorrow at the retreat. But I also wanted to ask you a little bit about yourself before I ask you about step parenting or becoming a step family. To tell me just a little bit about yourself. How did you end up developing this as your area of expertise?
Well, I was doing my dissertation, and at that time I was married to a man with 2 kids. And those children were 5 and 9 when I met them. And by the time I was doing my dissertation, they were about 9 and 13. Mm-hmm. And something had changed over time. So my first book and my dissertation were about stages of development and becoming a step family. I could see that things had changed because my stepdaughters had gotten older, but also something else was happening. Mm-hmm. And what was wonderful for me at the time is you do a literature review when you write a dissertation. There was nothing. Wow. My dissertation was published in 1980. There was nothing. And I got hooked. That was in 1980. The research since then has gotten more and more sophisticated, quite wonderful. However, even the last 20 years, 2 clinical books.
Interesting.
Mine and one other person's.
Yeah, you've really done some groundbreaking work in terms of the literature that's out there for not only clinicians, but for people in the who need to know about this, who are not part of the mental health profession.
There is now a lot more out there for step families, for blended families, for step parents. However, a lot of it is somebody's opinion, and a lot of it is quite well-meaning. However, not much of it is based on what we know works and what doesn't, mm-hmm. of which the good news is we have a ton of research that tells us what works and what doesn't. But so much of what is out there is very, very well-meaning. However, it's misleading and sometimes quite destructive. And then when you can't depend on a therapist to know, you're kind of in a tough spot.
Yes. Well, I was struck as I read up on this subject, because I wanted to do some research before we interviewed, that a third of all families are made up of step families. And I'm wondering if that is sometimes a surprising notion to people who aren't part of step families.
The number the Pew Research has is that 42% of us have a close step relationship. Mm-hmm. That's a big number.
Yes.
But I think, as much as we've accepted divorce in our culture, it's sort of like you get divorced, and then when you recouple, you just form a first-time family again. Mm-hmm. And there is so little awareness of how fundamentally different what we call a blended family is from a first-time
Tell
family.
me about that expression about, well, I'm struck by that expression, first-time family versus, but also, is there a difference between a step family and a blended family?
It's a wonderful question. They are the same.
They're the same.
Blended family is the language that we use. It's the language that's in the culture. And I think it captures the wish for, we're just all going to be one. Step family is the term we use, the researchers use, clinicians use, but it's the same. They're both the same.
Well, you'll be speaking to the clinicians tomorrow about the 5 big challenges that you see that step families face. I'm wondering if we could just talk about those go through them, 1 through 5, and you could just say a little bit about each one.
About each one.
And why you see this as one of the main challenges. The first one seems very clear, but it also seems like it would be the most painful thing to work through, is the insider-outsider positions. That the insider-outsider positions in a step family can be really intense and they can get really stuck. So can you tell us a little bit about who's inside, who's outside?
Step parents are often the outsiders, and parents are the insiders, and here's how that happens. In a first-time family, the couple has some time together, usually, to develop some connection, to begin to trust each other, to get to know each other, even to know about our differences. You always load the dishwasher that way, and I like to load the dishwasher this way. And a first-time couple has a little bit of time together to find some ways we do things. And some of them maybe have worked out consciously, a lot of them unconsciously. Oh, we read the paper on Sunday morning. We've never talked about it, but I start with the sports section, you read the Metro section, and then at some point we trade, and then we go to coffee. It's a kind of rhythm. In a first-time family, the first child is born into that already created connection. And really important, kids in a first-time family are born hardwired to connect to both of their parents, and both parents are hardwired to connect back. That whole family together begins to develop what we call attachment, connection to each other. If things go well enough, they begin to develop a rhythm of how we do things as a family. And another child or another, if they come into that already established connection. And children in a first-time family come usually hardwired for connection to both of their parents and vice versa. So when there's a divorce or a death, let's say it's a divorce, kids become part of 2 single-parent families. So if I'm divorced, I have a child, and that child and I have a 8, 10, 12-year connection. We have deeply grooved channels of attachment, and we have understandings about how we like to do things. Step parent enters as an outsider to all of that. And it turns out that as much as often step couples are very much in love, there's some research that they may be even more in love than first-time couples, the powerful established connection is between not only me and my kid, but my kid and his or her other parent, not with the step parent. And the shared understandings about what's a mess in my family, is grape nuts a form of cardboard or a breakfast food? In my daughters and my family, it was a breakfast food. In my husband's family, it was a form of cardboard. Those agreements are between parents and children. So that means every time a child enters the conversation or the room, if you and I are talking, I'm the parent and you're the step parent, and my kid just made the soccer team or didn't make the soccer team, she bursts into the door. Who does she want to talk to?
Yeah.
She wants to talk to her parent. So my kid bursts in and says, Mommy, 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 what does a good parent do? I turn to my kid, and then where does that leave you? Over and over and over and over again. It's a painful experience for step parents. We are Stephen Porges, who's an interpersonal neurobiologist, says that we are wired to expect people who are close to us to turn towards us. And for step parents, parents have to turn away all the time. In a first-time family, if this is our kid, I turn away and you're still connected. Besides which, sometimes that kid is going to come to you.
Right.
And sometimes going to come to me. In a step family, if I'm the parent, I am the stuck insider. I am more connected to you, my partner. I am more connected to my kid and to my kid's other parent, dead or alive, good or bad. That person is part of our family, and you are less connected. You are outside. That's the insider-outsider. And to start a new relationship where you have such fundamentally different experiences, day in and day out. So later, if things go well, we go to bed and you say to me, honey, that was hard. And I go, huh? What? Because nothing was hard for me.
Yes.
What was hard for me is it was hard for you. And now if things go well, I might say, oh, what happened, Gay? And you say, well, sweetie, when your kid came in, I got left. Now if things go well, I might say, oh, gosh. Things go poorly, you might start with, how could you? And even if you started well, I might say, but she's my daughter, what do you expect? Mm-hmm. And then where does that leave you? What you need is, oh, I get it. I get it. And what I need is, I'm torn and I need you to get that I can't choose between the two. Mm-hmm. That's the insider-outsider challenge. And the challenge is, how do we both hold both? How do we connect over a difference? Because it is so much easier to connect when we feel it, when we see the same thing the same way.
Right, right. So there's that difference in the connection.
Yes.
And finding a way through that. And it sounds like it's painful. And that it's important that that in the partnership that there's some acknowledgement of that.
It's important for parents to start to get how painful it is to be left out, because it's important for step parents to get how painful it is to hear that somebody I love, when I turn to you, somebody I love is unhappy, and if I turn to my kid, somebody I love is unhappy.
So
we
the
need
parent
to both.
gets the position of being caught in the middle.
That's right, torn.
Yes. Okay.
So how do you talk to me if you're the step parent and tell me in a way that opens my heart as opposed to how could you? And how do I try not to get defensive and really hear and get? Because if I get it, if you're left out and I get it, you know, after my daughter came racing in later, I might say, are you okay, sweetie? There it was again.
Yeah.
We got interrupted. You need a hug?
Yeah.
Right?
Right. So the acknowledgement that that's an ongoing thing, and probably it's not as if it goes away completely.
It's one of the challenges that I think it comes on early. It's very strong. It often stays, sometimes in softer form later on. What changes is that we connect over it. But I'm together in with my husband for 23 years. My daughter, he has 3 kids older than my kid, all married, been married for 10 or 12 or 14 years. My daughter just got married. She's my first and my only. I was so excited. My husband was not as excited. It's not his kid. Yeah. Even after 23 years, he loves her.
Yeah.
It's not his kid. And it was hard to remember, you know, like I'm the international expert on step families, and I'm supposed to remember this is normal. And really part of me wants to say to him, where the hell are you? You should be here with me. And you know, and then another part of me says, oh shoot, he's the step parent. Bummer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what can I do but go to him and say, hold me? It makes me sad.
Right.
I can't make him be different.
Yeah.
So what's different is we're connected over it.
Yeah. The second challenge, you say, is that children of all ages struggle with losses. And I think that's such an important thing to know, is that of all ages they struggle with losses, loyalty binds, and too much change.
Yes.
And this is a big challenge.
So here's how loyalty binds unfolds. There is the sense that I should only love one. And there are some things in our culture that support that. And we can help kids with that. We can say to kids, you know, you have a stepmom and a mom. For some kids, that's kind of confusing. But I just want you to know, you know, your mom will always have a permanent place in your house, in your heart. in your heart. Your mom will always have a permanent place in your heart. And, you know, this is Gay. She's my new partner. I love her. You may not. And I hope you come to like her. And when you do, or if you do, it will be in a different place in your heart than your mom has. Now, if a child does not have an intense loyalty bind, that can be helpful. However, if the parent in the other household is jealous, frightened, insecure, and is bad-mouthing or leaking or pulling on their kid, loyalty binds become unbearable for children. And in fact, we know it's not divorce that is the most clear predictor of kids not doing well. It's tension and conflict. So one of the things I say to my clients and to my supervisees is we have to help ex-spouses become co-parents. If you're the step-parent, whether you like that person or not, she or he is part of our lives because they're part of the kids' lives.
Well, that's one of your
That's
one
the
of your
fifth
other
challenge.
challenges. That's your
Yes.
fifth challenge is that the
Right.
ex-spouse is part of the
Part
family,
of the
no
family.
matter what.
That's right. That's the fifth challenge. But the way it feeds into the challenge for kids is kids need not to be in a loyalty bind. So losses, loyalty binds, and the third thing is change. What we find is that for many kids, becoming part of a step family is actually more challenging than divorce. And we think it's because the change piles up. We don't know for sure, but we think it's because the change piles up. And because parents really get that divorce is hard for kids, they often don't get that becoming a step parent is hard for kids. And it tears their hearts a little bit.
I also have noticed with divorcing families that the timelines are very different.
That's
and
right.
a parent can be on a completely different timeline than the child is in terms of the grief or the loss or the change. So that
Exactly.
seems like that's a struggle.
Yes, well, parents, in terms of the grief over the divorce, and also when the parent falls in love, you know, if I've fallen in love with you, my kid's not in love. In fact, for my kid might be in love for about 3 weeks or 2 months or until you move in or something serious happens, but my kid's not in love with you. You know, they may welcome you for a little while until things get serious. And then that kid may start having a harder time because when I turn to you, I turn away from my kid in a step family.
Yeah.
So moving slowly is hard.
And
It's hard.
Yes, so that's one of your recommendations is that you need to move slowly.
A step at a time. Right.
Yeah.
Third challenge?
Third challenge, parenting tasks divide parents and step parents.
Yeah, there are what I call easy wrong turns in step families. One of them being if the couple is close, the kids are fine, when in fact we need this and we need parent-child time. In the easy wrong turn around parenting is parents and step parents should make a whole nice new raft of rules and parents should back step parents up. Now that makes kind of logical sense. Step parents and adults. And in fact, often parents get a little more permissive post-divorce as single parents. However, the research is really clear we have a lot of it. Until or unless children have a trusting, caring relationship with their step-parent, and that's the children feel it, not the step-parent, parents have to retain the disciplinary role. Parents have to be the limit setters.
And what do the step parents have to be?
Step parents concentrate on connection, not correction, or as my friend Beverly says, relationships, not rules. Now that's tough if you're the step parent and my kid, you know, is doing things that are irritating to you. Very likely because we didn't raise her together, And also, if she comes into a room and she doesn't even look at you, it's going to make it that much more irritating when she leaves cocoa all over the kitchen, and you like a clean kitchen. However, that means that when there's cocoa all over the kitchen and you're the step-parent, you need to come to me, the parent, and say, could you ask Jennifer to clean up, please? I'd really appreciate it. Not, you will clean up now or you won't be allowed in the kitchen again. Now, it doesn't mean step-parents have to be silent, but they have to be much more skillful than you have to be. It's good to be skillful with your own kid, but when you're a step-parent, it's a fragile relationship.
Yes.
So you can say, gee, Jenny, I'd sure love it if you'd clean up the cocoa. It'd make a big difference to me. That's what we call an I message. It's soft, it's caring. It's very different from you will clean up the cocoa, or I can't believe you're such a slob.
Yeah.
So parents have to retain the disciplinary role. The other thing that we know is step-parents everywhere, and I've now taught all over the United States and Canada and Japan and Singapore.
Whoa.
Step-parents everywhere want more limits and structure for their kids. Parents everywhere want more love and understanding for their own kids. So that means step-parents say, you should make more rules, and parents say, she's just a kid. What kids actually need is called authoritative parenting, both loving and moderately firm. So kids do need a parent to say, I know this is hard for you, and you do have to say hello to Gay. And step-parents do need parents to protect them some. But the truth is that what kids need is, it's called authoritative parenting, warm and firm from the parent. They don't need permissive parenting, which is, I love you, honey, no matter what you do. And they don't need authoritarian parenting, which is, you will do it now or else. Step-parents get pulled into authoritarian parenting because they're irritated. It's irritating. And when step-parents get more authoritarian, parents often get more permissive and protective. So you say, she should clean up, and if you weren't such a wimp, she would. And I say, she's just being a kid. What's your problem? What's a little cocoa? You get more upset, you push harder, I push harder. I call it the polarization polka. It's not pretty.
No, no.
Better would be a collaborative cha-cha where you would say, I think Jenny's old enough to clean up after herself. And if I didn't get defensive, I might say, it was fine with me. They were making their own cocoa when I was a single parent. If there was cocoa all over the kitchen, I didn't care. But yeah, I can see what you're saying. But then it would be up to me, the parent, to say, I think it's time you learn to clean up the cocoa.
Wow.
I think you could do this.
It's a really complicated dance.
Isn't it?
Yes, it is a really complicated dance. The fourth thing, and then I want to ask you a few more questions. I'm realizing we're almost at the end of our interview. Oh. Can you believe it? The fourth challenge is a new family culture must be built in the presence of the already established family culture.
So this idea of blended family sounds like we're going to make a smoothie. You got blueberries, I got strawberries, we're going to put them together and make a smoothie. Yes. But in fact, it's a lot more, I always say, like putting a Japanese family and an Italian family together and say, have at it, be a family. And we can't make it happen by saying everybody's going to eat pasta and use chopsticks. That's not going to work. So, in fact, we go to sit down, and for me, if I'm Japanese, I expect a greeting like this. That feels cold to you if you're Italian. If you're Italian, you expect a greeting like this. That looks really intrusive to me if I'm Japanese, right? So, and step couples are often told to talk about this stuff ahead of time. It is important to talk. However, a lot of this, you can't name it until it happens. And that moment of, I call it learning by goofing, to have that spike of tension and then go, oh, another one. All right, let's talk about greetings.
Yeah.
So that's the fourth challenge. And what I say is 2 or 3 new rules. And if we got 2 sets of kids, make them about the same amount of change for everybody.
Yes.
If my kids are used to walking in and out of each other's rooms and your kids are used to knocking, for my kids to learn to knock is going to be tough. So everybody will knock on everybody's door first will be much harder for my kid than for yours. 2 or 3 new rules, concentrate on civility and respect. That's the 4th challenge.
Let me ask you this, and we'll need to wrap it up in a second. I can't quite believe it, but when should families reach out for help with this? I mean, it sounds so complicated, and it sounds like it makes so much sense to get an outside view on it, especially somebody who's skilled and knows these patterns and understands these patterns and understands everybody's role and how it can be difficult. So
part of the dilemma is there are so few people who have this training. That is why I come to teach for you.
Yes.
You know, there are not enough. Therapists don't learn this in graduate school. They learn about divorce, and that's it.
Yes.
They don't. You learn about step families. So it is important to get help, but it's very important to ask, you know, have you read Patricia Babineau's book? What is it you know about step families? What do you know about what the differences are? And that's sad because it's hard enough to go asking for help, and that much harder to have to screen your help. Because if you get a therapist, and I've had the aftermath, you get a therapist, thinks they know step families and says, well, your couple comes first. The kid gets worse and worse and worse because the parent isn't giving enough connection. That doesn't help. So get help when you want help, but screen it well. You can get help at any time.
So you're
help
saying
is good.
do some research
Yes.
about who knows what they're talking about.
And I'm sorry you're not going to find very many. So read my book and read Karen's in my book. That will help.
Right. And do you have a website?
I do.
You do. Okay. So can I point people to your website?
Sure.
So we'll make sure that link is up on the television screen, so you can so people know how to contact you, for instance.
Sure.
And to perhaps you might have some recommendations. Of
Sometimes
some
I do. I'm not taking new clients at all. I'm continuing to supervise other therapists and consult
Well, that's
to them.
good because you're training other people.
That's right.
Right.
But I do sometimes know people, or I know somebody you could work with by internet at least.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, that's great. Thank you so much for coming and spending your time with us. And I can imagine tomorrow this conference is going to be a very exciting opportunity for so many therapists. And I am glad, considering all you've said here, that there will be developing a new army of therapists who can work with step families, because it sounds very hard and challenging, and that we need to make sure people who are in this situation are supported.
Yes, and good help makes a difference.
It really
Knowing what
does.
works and what doesn't makes a big difference. So thank you for having me.
You bet.
I really appreciate it.
All right, thanks so much. And thank you for joining us once again on Keep Talking, a community dialogue about mental health. For the Brattleboro Retreat, I thank you for joining us. And I also would like to thank BCTV for all their help and assistance. We couldn't do this without them.